Yeah, I think the first one was like how to become a committer.
Yeah. So the way most of us started was we started using Airflow and we fixed things that were wrong for us.
Ash, you're talking. I think you're on mute.
I was talking. Can anyone else hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay. Everyone else can hear me. So we started fixing things that were wrong for us. We saw a small feature missing and we just submitted a pull request. I think one of mine was kind of adding, I can't remember, but it's something to do with S3, I'm sure. And it's just kind of adding a feature to an S3 hook or the one of the S3 sensors or something of that variety. And this is obviously kind of, as Griselda said yesterday, this is a cultural thing because it's kind of, my culture is steeped in open source and I see something missing or wrong and I just submit a PR. It's what I do. But I think that's how most of us started, is just submit a PR and keep doing them. So the easiest way to start is fix something that you want to see fixed. We do have a list now of good first issues. If you go to github.com/apache/airflow/contribute, GitHub now hopefully pulls those all into one place, but there's not any requirement to do that. You can do those if you want to, but they're sort of small things. But if you want to dive deep in somewhere and add something else, go for it. Yes, and I guess kind of the other way would be to join one of the we run them occasionally, kind of new contributor workshops. I believe there's one for this workshop if we haven't already had it.
We have it.
Do you want to say a bit about that, Jarek?
Yeah, so that's next week together with Tomek. We are going to run the workshop for new contributors, and we already run like 5 or 6 of them. Some of them together with Foco, who is here as well. That's a good thing to start. But I also like watching yesterday's sessions of Greece and Idemo. I mean, you don't have to contribute the code itself. You can contribute documentation. You can take active part in the discussions first if you want to have something done. You don't have to really start with the code. And for me, when I started, like it was like initially really like difficult to understand about all the discussions and communication happening on the dev list. Like, who is deciding who, like how do I contribute this? For me, like unlike Ash, I was like very new to open source, like to contributing 2 years ago when I started. But I loved it from like very early when I realized that anyone can have a voice and anyone can take part in the discussion. And you can do like even small contribution to help and something that is important for you, and then that makes really a difference for the whole community. That was fantastic learning that I had.
I think one of my first contribution was fixing a typo. It was fixing. It was, I think, GCS to GCS operator, and there was a spelling mistake. It was GSC, and I was working on a project regarding the same. And then I said, "This is not working." And I created a PR, and I think it was Foco who actually merged it. And I had no idea. I was very new to the open source as well. I didn't know how things work. I might not even have followed the PR template, but there were committers out there to help and guide. So that was really, really helpful thing, because it looks intimidating from the outside world if you are doing it for the first time. Especially if it's code related. For documentation, I stress this, that your first few contributions can strictly be documentation related, because it makes the transition easy and at least you will know how the process works. So I think, documentation changes are definitely very, very important. That's what separates a great project and a good project. So please feel to contribute any documentation project, any related Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
nice. So okay, moving on to the next question that GitLab has ended the MySQL support and decided to focus on Postgres. So does Airflow also plan to keep supporting multiple databases in the long run, or we just gonna stick to some couple of databases as official supported uh, DBs?
Personally, I do all my testing on Postgres.
Would like to take this question.
I'll start. Yeah, so I do everything on Postgres locally, and that's what we run in production at Astronomer. I mean, we use Google Cloud SQL, but yeah, I think Airflow as a project should continue supporting multiple databases while they still make sense. Yeah, it's like right now we're not doing anything heavy, and the cost to us as a project, to our development speed to support multiple database is not that heavy. We've got all the tooling and stuff built up now. So I'd be happy to see us say Postgres is the only thing we officially support, but I'm not pushing for that to be the case. Not yet, anyway. I don't see the need. And I think, continuing to support the hundreds or thousands of people who are still using MySQL, or who are currently using MySQL, to say, sorry, you've got to change your whole database, would mean they would never upgrade. So we'd lose them as users. So, yeah, no, we may more strongly recommend that you use Postgres, for instance. I personally do, but as a project, no. I think we're not going to drop support for MySQL anytime soon, and our use of SQL is pretty standard. So long as it's something that SQL Alchemy supports, we'll do our best to make it run. This kind of someone brought up the question on Slack or on a PR. I think it was on Slack. Should we support MSQL, SQL Server? For the metadata service particularly. And it's like, well, yes, we'll try. The question is whether we officially support it and add it to our test matrix or not. To kind of take the question to the next level, which is, should we officially support more databases? It's like, well, that's possibly a bigger question, one we should have on the dev list, which is, supporting these is good, but then this starts to slow down our speed of development, and we have to test more things. So, yeah, not sure on that one.
Yeah, like yesterday, I even commented on someone's asking how to run things on Oracle database, and my question is like, we can do that, no problem, but you have to make sure that you contribute all the changes needed to run it on Oracle and run all our test suite on Oracle automatically, because otherwise someone may bring a new feature that will break Oracle and we will not even know. So like we have now MySQL and SQLite and Postgres running all the time on CI, and then we can be sure that it's running. But like it's like adding new is like add cost on the running them and time, and there were some features like timestamp format, for example, which was different on MySQL. It actually we had to do some modifications in there. So the same things can be on Oracle and other databases as well.
Ash, maybe to extend the question a bit, if you would do it over again, would you still choose to use SQL Alchemy and support all the databases, or would you pick one?
If I was starting Airflow, I probably would have done it as a Django project, which involves. So specifically, I don't have a problem with SQL Alchemy, but I find that a lot of Flask apps end up growing, and you end up re-implementing half of what Django and the Django admin and the Django user models have done, but just not quite as well in my experience. So I would have done it as a Django project. Personal preference. There's nothing wrong with Flask. It works. It's great, but it's just I was more familiar with Django. So if I was starting it, I would have done it as a Django project. So no SQL Alchemy, but not because of SQL Alchemy, and that probably would have worked fine with same level of database support, just no SQL Alchemy.
Thanks.
Nice. Okay, so in the next question is about that. How do you think that Airflow can have more participations from regions like Latin America?
I think part of it was answered yesterday, or proposed at least yesterday during the talk of Ijamal and Greece. So indeed, like I was helping Ijamal to get the list of contributors from like the map of contributors, and I looked through all the contributors, and I was kind of surprised that there is not a single person that I could pinpoint from South America. All over the places like Africa, Asia, Europe, North America. There were people from everywhere. So I think Spanish is the limitation there, because most of people in Latin America or in South America, they speak Spanish, and that's their native language. And English might be a kind of barrier. So at least like converting the documentation, translating it to Spanish might help a bit for like kind of people to start with Airflow. That might be good starting point.
Yeah, I also think local meetups definitely help. I remember there were local meetup groups for Japan or China, or even both, and those were in local languages. So that would definitely help increase Airflow adoption, and also help the native people over there to learn more about the project, how they can contribute to the project. And yeah, I think that would be the first step.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, moving on to the next question. Is there any future for an Airflow operator for Kubernetes? Google had been making one, but looks like it is abandoned the project.
Yeah. So for those not familiar with Kubernetes, Kubernetes also has a concept called operator, which is annoyingly not the same as Airflow operators. So that kind of an Airflow, a Kubernetes operator is, I guess, it's kind of what used to be called a CRD or a custom resource definition. But this is a way you can kind of have a Airflow resource sort of natively aware in Kubernetes. Tomek, I believe you've been doing some looking at this or thinking about it. Do you want to take this question?
Yeah, there is a plan to in fact rewrite the operator, because the one which is contributed is not as good as we would expect as a community. It works. We know that there is quite a lot of problems. From what I talked with Daniel Imberman, we decided that the first thing to do would be to have the Helm chart, because once we have the Helm chart, we can use the operator framework to generate the new operator and the Kubernetes operator. And then using this as a starting point, we can move forward and extend the possibilities of the operator. For example, we will be able to include the HPA mechanism of the native HPA mechanism, for example, to scale the operator and the Airflow itself automatically using the resources we have, because we will be able to access some internal information of the Airflow, which will make the auto-scaling more Airflow aware. For example, we can try not to kill the pods, terminate the pods that are running the task, and select the other pods and things like that.
And I would like to add to that. It's like we are now really at the stage that we are building all the deployment capabilities in the Airflow repository, or in like what community is providing, and it's going from like grounds up. So like we had Airflow as an application, and we had the Docker file, then we have a Helm chart, and on top of that we can start building new stuff. So we can. The plan is to also add like a Docker Compose, like kind of standard deployment that people locally can install very easily to try Airflow, then build the operator. And I think that the key here is like this is all integrated in our test environment as well, and in our Airflow development process, so that while we are developing Airflow and adding new features, we can evolve it together and make sure that it works now that it's part of the source code and part of the continuous integration and testing that we run on top of it. And so I think this is really prerequisite, because previously we had like kind of completely separated Helm chart done by someone else, and Docker file, the Potiuk Docker file done by someone else, and like making sure that it all works together was a difficult one. And now we are at the point that we can start making it really like working tested. And what we release is like really proven and something that we can officially say, yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Like moving to the next question, is it advisable to run streaming jobs on Airflow, like Spark streaming or Kafka streams, which basically runs for weeks without the interruption? You see a lot of this mic.
I think Foko, you might have some points on that. I mean, with the experience from Go Data Driven.
Yeah, so we see many things. So yeah, it's a good thing that at least it's advisable to run streaming jobs on Airflow. Well, Airflow is not streaming, right? It's batch oriented. Spark streaming or Kafka stream based real-time jobs will run for weeks without interruptions. So what we sometimes do, so if you have like a Spark streaming job or a Kafka streams job, and that just runs on your cluster, we still have like an Airflow job that sometimes checks like is everything still running? Maybe there's a new version of the code, and it will deploy like the new version of the code. So sometimes we use Airflow to monitor it. Yeah, but Airflow, unfortunately, is not designed for doing streaming workloads. So you can still use it to monitor to see if everything is okay, and to see if the job is still alive. But unfortunately, it's not designed for streaming. So I would not process the data with Airflow itself.
However, I think that in last weeks there was a proposition about doing streaming jobs, streaming pipelines in the Airflow. It was described in I don't remember the name, but I think it was like event based or something like that.
Yeah.
It sounds quite interesting. I think it's something that we probably should take a look at, because it's a question which is asked many times. How can I support streaming jobs in the Airflow? I think also the like a few weeks ago, I think there was a discussion. I think it was even in the New York City meetup when we were talking about Airflow 2, that we should probably think about making Airflow more data aware. So, for example, to allow data processing in the Airflow, especially with the AI31, which allows you to define the DAGs in a much more simple way. I think it's something that we can revisit.
Yeah.
Sure, it's Airflow 2 or even later, because now there's a lot of changes.
I saw a proposal. I think it's like maybe months ago now. But sometimes if you have like a modern file system, let's say S3 or ADLS on Azure or Google Cloud Storage also support it. If you get like a new file on the storage, you can emit like an event. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a very interesting concept, that you have this event that will trigger like a diagram inside of your Airflow. And then maybe you can even have the file name that's of the file that landed on your data lake as like a parameter inside of the diagram, so you can directly pick it up and process it. Mm-hmm. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it's AIP35. It's currently called signal-based, but I think we discussed on the list to change it to event-based. To kind of tie those two threads together, I think the future for Airflow is to become more data aware, as kind of Tomek was saying. Airflow doesn't care what your jobs are doing, but if you tell it what your jobs are doing, it should give you richer and kind of nicer experience around it. To take an example, kind of from my background of Airflow, it was kind of streaming job and processing, huge data sets from suppliers of questionable quality. So kind of one of the things that we built in house, this was my previous company at this point, was we had a data quality check. So we do a traditional Spark ETL job to kind of stream and process, aggregate, and then not stream anyway, process and aggregate. But then at the end, we had a custom operator that ran a small Spark job in the same EMR cluster to go like, how many rows are there? Let's do some quick data quality, data sanity checks of, have the supplier messed up their data? So then again, like, how many nulls do we have in this column? Oh, whoops, it's all of them. Even at a high level, if you've got a Spark job and it's just transforming data, no like aggregation, it would be nice if you could report that number back to Airflow nicely and have it graphed, just so you can go click on my DAG and you could see a nice graph of number of lines processed over time. That's the kind of level of data awareness that I think would be really good inside Airflow. If the job of Airflow is to stream and support, to process your data and make it easy to operate your data pipelines, having that in Airflow would be great, because then once it's in Airflow, you could then also emit on it. You could have some kind of threshold quality checking, maybe integrate some existing projects to look for outliers and things like that. But yeah, just kind of bringing all that place into one central place would be a really nice thing. And then kind of when it comes to streaming, the other thing to look at would be the AIP coming out of Airbnb, AIP 17, which is smart sensors, sorry. Because at Airbnb, like that, something like 50 to 60% of their cluster is currently just taken up running sensors. And given sensors mostly do nothing, they sleep for a lot of their time, even with the ability to reschedule so they get their slot back. There's still a lot of churn there. So kind of when you combine all of these things together, I think Airflow gets a lot more data aware and the streaming situation starts to become possible. It's still the kind of thing where Airflow's currently, and I do say currently because it's not guaranteed to be that way, it's currently expected to not run forever.
Yeah.
There's nothing that really stops it, but it's just kind of not expected. So yeah, I think it's kind of like, if you want Airflow to support streaming, and I do, but I'm just not familiar with streaming, if you run streaming and want to run it on Airflow, come tell us how you'd like it to work. Help us design something.
Yeah, and that's the good place for you to start some discussions at the mailing list. A mailing list is very important for all the open source projects. And if you have any ideas, you can bring your ideas to the mailing list.
Also be extremely interesting if you have some kind of late arrivals and you want to reprocess some partitions or something. Right.
Yeah.
I think of it, yeah. Really cool.
Yeah.
I will look into it, ARB. Nice stuff.
Okay, nice. Moving on to the next question, that how to become an open source PMC member at a very young age. Any tips? And I see that the question is directed towards Kamil and Tomek. So assuming Kamil is not here, so we can.
It's all for Tomek.
So first of all, I don't know an easy answer because, to be honest, I was really surprised by being nominated to be PMC member of the Airflow, and I'm really thankful. But I'm a young person. That's true. I'm 26 now, and I'm really trying to bring open source to the young people because I know that, for example, universities there's nothing about open source, at least in Warsaw. And I have a lot of friends who are surprised how the open source really looks like. Like it's not the old guys in the basement. It's a really fantastic people who are open, welcoming often, and there is no problem in joining the open source. So I think Foco is also young, I think.
You have put focus age on the spot on the live show.
Yeah, but I think that the first step is to encourage yourself to try to join open source project. It doesn't have to be a big contribution. It can be, like it was said before, it can be a docs changes, typo, or anything like that. As the developers, we are using a lot of open source projects. Every framework, every library you use has an open repo on the GitHub. And when you spot a bug or something that doesn't work, and you know how to fix it, and you already fix it on your own fork or in your company, then take the 15 minutes to create the PR or the issue in the repository and propose your change and said, I'm willing to work on this. I need help, or show me the way how to do this. And people will help you. And I think that is the biggest step, the most important step in becoming a committer after some time, and it's PMC in the end, I think. And in the end, you can think about being the Apache Software Foundation member or things like that. But I think that's the most important step, is to contribute, to start contributing and be open to the suggestion you get. Be really, be empathetic. Like you have to understand that the other people don't have to have a lot of time to review a code. It's same about you. You don't have to spend whole week contributing to Airflow, to open source. It's enough to spend 1 hour instead of watching Netflix. Just make some move and contribute to open source.
Nice one. Yeah, I already passed 30, so I think I'm not young anymore.
maybe I'll comment. I'm the oldest one, I think, in the here. I absolutely love to work with young people. Like I'm working very closely with Tomek and Kamil, and like I learn every day from those two guys, even if I have like 20 years experience in my work. But one thing that I wanted to say, I really started to work on open source 2 years ago with Airflow. I didn't have a lot of experience with contributing to open source, just a little bit. But for me, like I found out that, and especially on the ApacheCon when we were together with Foco and Kamil and Tomek, sorry, and Felix, who we met there, I realized that for the 20 years of my career, I just missed this part, like open source crowd, and they were my crowd. I just, like being there is like fantastic experience. And if you, as a young person, you should just try to join and see how it works, how the dynamics is, how conflicts are resolved. This is the important part. Like we all have different opinions and we argue, and finally we got to some good conclusions, and that's fantastic place for like getting something done and getting something done well. And I've learned that like it's unlike any other enterprise or startup environment you can be in. Like being in the community of open source contributors, this is like a fantastic place for an engineer to thrive.
Sorry, go ahead, Ash.
Add one thing, that according to the Apache Software Foundation community survey, which was mentioned by Greece yesterday, only 5% of the contributors is under 24 years. So there's only few of us who are young and contribute. And I think it's wrong, because the open source is a place where you can learn, and no one is going to fire you or will help you for your mistakes. I think it's great.
Yeah, I was just kind of gonna add on to that certainly the Airflow community, we try to be opening, we try to be welcome. In all your dealings, most of them are going to be over text, with their either email or their Slack. Assume good intent by the other person. It's very easy to read malice or slight or kind of anger into text that isn't there. Stop, step back, go for a walk, come back, assume good intent by the other person, because it's almost always good intent from their side. So yeah, just kind of that, and generally, and kind of be pushy, but kind of keep making sure if you're waiting for a PR, you will have to badger us occasionally. There are only so many of us, and there are lots of open PRs, so we can't review them all the time. So don't be afraid to ask again to get it merged. Keep just nicely pestering us until we review it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good addition. I think also the power of many Airflow projects is because it's being used all over the world, all different companies. So I think it's like Jarek mentioned, like there's always a bit of discussion. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, but I think in the end it's a good thing just to keep the software like general and applicable for all the companies that use it, and not having it be specialized for one specific company. I think that's a very strong point of open source software. That's a lot of different companies can use it, and it's a very broad foundation.
Yeah, and one of the interesting thing that it's not directly clear is you can learn so many things just by reviewing PRs. So even if you are not actively contributing, if you just check the open PRs, the feedback others get on it, you'll learn many things. Personally, I was not doing too much of Python testing before I started contributing to Airflow, and I learned so many new things. Most of the things I've been using these days have been all thanks to Airflow and the time I've spent creating those PRs on Airflow.
And maybe one last comment. I think what really helps, because like that's answering like how to become a PMC member, right, at at a young age. I think what really helps is to find a mentor. Like if you pinpoint like one person and you talk to that person, like we have lots of like PMC members and committers as well in our community who are really willing to help you to grow. And if you ask for it, you'll get help from those people. But just to say like, hey, I see that you are here, and I want to do that, and like, can you help me? I actually got someone asking me becoming their mentor, and he said like, I will be able to start contributing like in December. Would you be happy to start in December 2020 to become my mentor? And I said yes, like, but somebody is already thinking about that, so like, just ask for this, and you will get some help from people.
Great. And I think the another takeaway is that Kaxil need to hit the gym, right? Because you seem older than you are.
I know, man. You just said it, and I'll go today.
Gyms are still closed here. Can't go to the gym yet. You just have to run around outside.
That's one of the side effects of working on open source, though. You will spend so much time contributing that you will lose your personal health. So yeah, you need to make sure that you spend your time with your family and take care of your health. That applies to me as well.
Yeah.
But by the way, when you are contributing and all people see, in fact, is your GitHub handle, and no one is going to care how old are you. So I think we don't know each other's age, for example, and we don't know a lot about us. It's only our contribution and our commitment to the project and to the open source in general.
Yeah, I'm just 28, by the way.
Yeah. Another good point I want to like made it here, because I felt it myself that many times people reach out to the committers and PMC members in the help of like solving their business challenges, basically, right? Like solving the problem they're facing at the company, not as a project itself. Like they're like wanted to just see how I can use this operator and this operator, and how I can transfer the data. Like, it's just like solving the work problem. Like, so it is not really something we can help actually. Like, so it should be like more generalistic terms, and we should be talk about more broader aspects, not solving a particular, like how do I operate MySQL operator, right? So there are lots of guides available in YouTube and many places. Okay.
But on the other hand, you have this discussion list, like discussion list and Slack channel, especially troubleshooting. And what I found It's like we don't, as a committers, we don't have to help people always, because people help each other, and this is fantastic as well. Like the more questions people ask there, the more answers will be there, and then the more other people can help, and this is happening every day.
Yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree.
There's a question about that, which I'll just kind of tackle now, which is that there's a mailing list, there's lots of Slack channels. What's the right place to post? So broadly, Slack for help. If you want to have, I've got having a problem. How do I use this operator? Slack, either kind of generally the troubleshooting or the troubleshooting channel in Slack is a good place to start. Sometimes there are a few more specific ones. So there's Airflow GCP, Airflow AWS, Airflow Azure for kind of the cloud specific running on or using their operators. Those are good places for those kind of questions. Troubleshooting is definitely a good place to start. There are two mailing lists. There's dev at airflow.apache.org and users at airflow.apache.org. Users is a fairly new channel, so the volumes are still a little bit small, but that's a good place if you want to ask for help, but you don't want to join Slack. It's kind of more of an asynchronous thing. And dev used to cover everything, but dev should be used for developing Airflow itself rather than using Airflow type questions. To answer the actual question, which is what's the right place to post, a lot of conversation can happen on Slack to start it and to flesh it out, but kind of any formal decision for as the project takes as a whole has to happen on the mailing list. The Apache policy is basically the mailing lists are the only official communication channel. So like anything we say here is kind of not official for Airflow projects. So all kind of project direction decisions should happen on the dev mailing list. So that's AIPs, that would be adding or dropping support for databases, that kind of thing. That has to happen on the dev at mailing list. So there we go.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. The future of the subdeg operator, and is it still usable, or like what we think, like what the committers think about the future of the subdeg operator?
Subdeg operators are very much usable with caveats in 1.10 series, but they have been improved in Airflow Master, and there are more improvements coming to it before Airflow 2.0. So we are trying to make it just a UI concept as a mailing list conversation someone started. So yeah, subdeg operators would have been improved more for 2.0, but they are still usable for 1.10 with some caveats, like you need to set by default it uses sequential executor, but if you want to use something else you can set it. You need to know some caveats like the pool, you can exhaust your pool, so having a separate pool dedicated to subdeg operators might be a good idea.
Yeah, to kind of expand on that, subdags have traditionally been used for just grouping tasks, to take a big complex structured DAG and to collapse it down to make it easier to manage. So it was the way the subdag operator works currently is that when the job starts up, it basically starts like a little mini scheduler, which is often not what people actually want from subdags. They just want to kind of manage the visual complexity. So there's been talk, a thread on the mailing list about making it a kind of just some way of grouping tasks together to collapse them and they can be nested. So you have the same UI power as a subdag operator, but without the change of behavior. But subdag operator isn't going away anywhere, at least not now. So for the entire, it will be there in 2.0, which means it'll be available for the entire Airflow 2.x. So yeah, it's not going away anytime soon. Absolutely can use it.
Okay, great to know. Yeah, I think maybe we can take the last question. I think it's about that the AIPH was mentioning about the smart sensors, and the question is about like is the sensors heavy users pattern caused by the cross DAG dependencies?
I can't speak in detail about Airbnb's sensor usage, but I don't believe it is cross-DAG dependencies. It's a lot of kind of waiting for files to be processed, or waiting for deliver, or waiting for a Spark job to finish, kind of thing. So it's like it's not cross-stack dependencies directly. It's more just kind of long-running tasks or asynchronous tasks or something coming in that way. So that's my understanding of sensor usage at Airbnb. But again, it's kind of like third hand, so don't trust me that much on that one.
Okay, I think So the last question we can take is about. Would like to know that what are the favorite talks in so far in the Airflow Summit by each of you? Like if you have to pick one talk you attended and you have to mark it as a favorite talk, right? Which one it would be? You can start with it.
That's a difficult question. I think one from Aizamal and Griselda yesterday was important one, and it's just to show that it's not always the code. It's always the community over code, as the motto for Apache Software Foundation. And yeah, I'll not go too deep. I'm sure there are other people want to say as well. So yeah, that's one for me.
I agree with Kaxil. I think that talking about the community is much more important than the code. There is a lot of more contribution than just the code. It could be, as mentioned earlier, docs changes, graphic designs, and things like that. By the way, there's a really interesting initiative called Open Source Design, which is for the designers and the people who are not familiar with the code. But we as a community need such things to look good.
And that's an interesting one, because I also wanted to point out the same talk. So it seems that the ASF community over code is like something that we take very like seriously. And yeah, like the talk yesterday was actually, for me, it was a bit more eye-opening as well. Like how more we should still open for those not necessarily non-code committers, because this really makes the community thrive, and that's so important topic. That just telling that yesterday was really cool from Aijaman and Greece, and that was fantastic.
For me, don't worry, I'm not going to say the same one. It was an interesting talk, but yeah, my favorite one so far has been the one from the keynote on Tuesday from Kevin Yang, Dan Davidov, and Tao Feng. It's kind of always really interesting to see how Airflow has evolved, kind of once it's been in a company for years, and how they use it. So I thought that one was really super interesting.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick, huh? Yeah, so I think it's what I always find very interesting is like how many people use Airflow in a different way. Like it started off with Airbnb doing BI kind of workloads, but in the next talk with Société Générale, it was about provisioning IT infrastructure. So that's something that I really like. I don't know want to pick. There's also so much still ahead. Really curious. Yeah.
Great, awesome. So that's it, guys. I think we are here, and just before we disperse, I would like to make an announcement that for any remaining questions, make use of Airflow Summit -attendees Slack channel, and we'll try to answer those questions there. Don't forget to check the virtual swags and the other meetups lined up for, I think, today evening, IST as well, and then like the whole next week as well. And again, thanks everybody. Thanks Kaxil, Tomek, Jarek, Ash, and Fofo. It was really nice having you guys.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you, Sumit. You too. Yeah, thanks for hosting us.
And depends on the time zone. I think in 10 hours we have another session. Still today.
Yeah.
Yes. This time we are hosting that in Warsaw. So
Cool. See you then.
And don't forget, after the session today, there are two happy hours, or happy hour in 2 hours. and that's going to be really cool. Like we're really trying to introduce this online town for interaction between everyone who is involved in the summit, both speakers and attendees, so we can continue discussing all the important topics over beer and pizza. Unfortunately, beer and pizza you have to provide yourself, so this is not going to happen online.
Cool. Thanks, Al.
Okay.
Great seeing you. Thanks for the questions.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.